Does a single act of kindness mean more in a world that offers none? This was the question that haunted Elara as she stood on the dusty, wind-swept street of Redemption Gulch. The sun beat down, turning the air into a shimmering haze, and the town's lone thoroughfare was a gauntlet of weary faces and closed doors. Elara, a girl with patched clothes and a heart as empty as her stomach, watched the world with the quiet desperation of someone who has lost everything. She had no family, no friends, and no prospects, a ghost in a town of the living, her only possession a worn sack containing a few trinkets. Every day was a fight for survival, a constant reminder of the cold, hard reality of the frontier. Her pain was a physical thing, a hollowness in her chest that gnawed at her as she walked by the saloon, the scent of cooking meat and whiskey a cruel taunt. She felt the ache of a past she could never reclaim, the ghost of a happy home that now seemed like a distant dream. The town's indifference was a kind of silence, a judgment passed without a single word. She was just another lost soul, another story of failure in a land where only the strong survived. The weight of her poverty was a shroud that kept her separate, alone, and invisible. Suddenly, a commotion broke the silent despair. An elderly man, stooped and frail, with a face like a wrinkled map of 1,000 journeys, struggled with a heavy wooden crate that had fallen from his wagon. He was surrounded by the bustling chaos of the market, ignored by the passers-by. Elara watched, a small lump of compassion forming in her throat. She had nothing to offer, no money to give, but she had a moment of time. Could a single moment of kindness change her fate, or would it simply be another act of futility in a world that had forgotten her? Elara, driven by a simple human impulse, rushed to the old man's side. She knelt in the dust, her worn hands helping him to gather the scattered apples. She was a whirlwind of motion, her quiet kindness a stark contrast to the apathetic crowd that continued to ignore them. The man, whose eyes were as clear and blue as a mountain lake, smiled at her with a gratitude so profound it made her heart ache. He was no ordinary man. He carried an aura of quiet strength beneath his frail exterior. He watched her as she worked, her movements quick and efficient, her face a mask of determination. He did not offer her money, for he saw the pride in her eyes and the honesty in her actions. Instead, he reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small, tarnished leather pouch. From it he produced a heavy, oddly shaped coin, one she had never seen before, its face marked with the image of a single, towering pine tree. He placed it in her palm, his fingers warm and calloused, and smiled a smile that held 1,000 secrets. "For your trouble, my dear," he said, his voice a low, gravelly whisper. "You have a good heart. Never lose it. A good heart is the only currency that matters." Elara, confused and humbled, stared at the strange coin in her hand. It felt cold and heavy, a symbol of a world she did not understand. She looked up to thank him, but he was gone, lost in the throng of the market. The air around her shifted, and the cold, judgmental silence of the town seemed to return with a new, more menacing weight. Why had the old man given her a coin she had never seen before? Was it a token of his appreciation, or a cruel joke? A deep sense of shame settled over Elara as she held the strange, heavy coin. It was not a coin of this town. She knew the flimsy, copper-like coins of Redemption Gulch all too well. This coin was different, its weight and markings feeling alien in her hand. Starving and desperate, she made her way to the general store, a last, desperate act of hope. She presented the coin to the owner, a man with a face as sour as old milk, who squinted at it in the dim light of the store before his expression twisted into a sneer. He threw the coin back at her, and it clattered on the dusty floor. "Don't you bring your fool's gold in here, girl," he spat, his voice laced with contempt. "Get out of my store." Elara's heart sank, a new wave of despair crashing over her. The hope that had blossomed within her for a brief, beautiful moment withered and died. The coin was worthless, a cruel joke played by an old man who had seemed so kind. She felt a profound sense of mockery, a bitterness that threatened to consume her. Was this what she deserved for daring to hope? Her quiet desperation now felt like a humiliation, a public spectacle for the town to witness. As she stumbled out of the store, the words of the old man echoed in her mind. A good heart is the only currency that matters. But the general store owner's words, fool's gold, were a more brutal reality. The coin was a test, but she had failed it. She stood in the middle of the street, the sun a burning eye in the sky, and felt the weight of her failure more than she felt the weight of her hunger. Why had he given her something so cruel? What did this strange, mocking gesture mean? Just as her tears began to fall, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Wait!" It was Mr. Thorne, the town's richest and most powerful man, the owner of the bank and the main rival of the man he was speaking about. He was a man of immense power, a force of nature in a town of lost souls, a man whose word was law in a town that had none. He held a hand out to her, and his eyes, sharp and calculating, were fixed on the strange coin she clutched in her hand. His face, usually a mask of smug satisfaction, was now a portrait of shock and anger. He walked toward her, his expensive boots crunching on the dusty ground, a presence so powerful she felt herself shrink away from him. "Where did you get that?" he demanded, his voice low and menacing. He grabbed the coin from her hand and turned it over, his expression a mixture of disbelief and simmering rage. "This is a Blackwood, a token only the richest man in this valley gives to those he deems worthy. It means you've been to see old Arthur Blackwood, the town's richest farmer. The old man is a recluse, a ghost, a legend. He hasn't been seen in this town in years. What did he say to you, girl?" The revelation hit Elara like a physical blow. The old man wasn't a beggar. He was a legend, a phantom of the hills. The coin wasn't a joke, but a sign, a golden ticket to a world she didn't know existed. Mr. Thorne's expression hardened, his eyes narrowing with a cold, desperate ambition. He was Arthur's arch rival, and he knew that if he could find him, he would have everything he had ever wanted. He leaned in close to Elara, his voice a low, terrifying whisper. "Listen to me, girl. The old man's a fool. He's a legend, and he trusts you. Tell me where he is, and I'll give you a new life, a new home, and all the money you could ever need. Refuse, and you'll find out just how cold this world can be." Was the old man a test, and Mr. Thorne's offer the final, most dangerous choice? Clara's mind reeled. The choice was not between good and evil, but between two different kinds of power, two different kinds of men. Mr. Thorne's offer was everything she had ever dreamed of, a way out of poverty, a way to put a roof over her head and food in her stomach. But to take it, she would have to betray a man who had shown her a kindness no one else had, a man who had trusted her with a piece of himself. She thought of the coin in her hand, the old man's words ringing in her ears. "A good heart is the only currency that matters." She couldn't do it. She couldn't betray him. She had nothing to offer but her honor, and in this moment, that was all she had left. She looked Mr. Thorne squarely in the eyes, her voice shaking but firm. "I don't know where he is," she lied, her face a mask of honest innocence. "He just gave me this coin and disappeared." Mr. Thorne's face contorted in a sneer, a chilling smile on his lips. "Fool," he said, and with that, he turned and walked away, his words a silent promise of a coming storm. Her act of refusal was a new, more dangerous kind of a choice, a direct confrontation with the most powerful man in the town. The town, which had been a silent witness to their exchange, now had a new story to tell. The rumor of the old man's return, and the poor girl who had crossed him, spread like wildfire. Elara knew that her time was running out, that Mr. Thorne would not rest until he had what he wanted, and that her life was in more danger now than it had ever been. She had to find the old man, not just for herself, but to warn him. But where do you look for a ghost? Elara knew she had to find the old man before Mr. Thorne did. She spent the next day searching, using the small clue he had given her, the image of a single towering pine tree, as her guide. The town was a network of gossip and judgment, a place where she had nothing but enemies. She ventured beyond the town limits, her feet aching and her stomach empty, into the vast, intimidating landscape of the Great Plains. The land was a brutal, beautiful place, a world of harsh wind, sun-scorched earth, and silent canyons. The physical journey was a mirror of her emotional state, a lonely and punishing ordeal that she was forced to endure alone. She was a ghost in this land of ghosts, a girl with nothing but her determination and a strange coin. She followed the trail of her own intuition, listening for the quiet whispers of the wind, looking for a sign. She found it, a small, hidden trail that led to a valley that was hidden from view. A single towering pine tree, its branches an ancient sentinel against the sky, stood in the center of a lush, green valley. It was a sanctuary, a secret world that the old man had built for himself, a fortress against the world he had left behind. She had found him. But as she reached the valley's entrance, a new sound filled the air, the distant thud of horses' hooves. Mr. Thorne's men were closing in, a dark, menacing presence in the quiet of the valley. She was faced with a more difficult choice: run and save herself, or go on and risk everything to warn the man who had shown her kindness. She had to make a choice. Would she sacrifice her own safety to protect a man who had given her a chance at a new life? Elara did not hesitate. She ran, her heart pounding in her chest, a silent alarm against the coming storm. She burst into the small, hidden ranch, her voice a gasping whisper. "They're coming," she said, her hands on her knees trying to catch her breath. "Mr. Thorne's men. They're coming for you." The old man, Arthur Blackwood, was standing by a well, his face a mask of calm. "I know," he said, his voice a low, knowing rumble. "I've been expecting them. The real question is, what are you going to do now, my dear? Are you going to run and save yourself, or are you going to stand and fight with me?" Clara looked at the old man, her heart filled with a mixture of fear and resolve. She had to choose. She chose to stand and fight. She stood by his side, her small body a shield against the coming storm. Mr. Thorne's men burst into the clearing, their faces grim, their guns drawn. But they were no match for the town's richest farmer. The old man, who was no ordinary man, pulled out a rifle, and with a voice of command and a cold glint in his eyes, he told them to get off his land. The men, intimidated by his unwavering resolve, hesitated, and then slowly began to back away. Mr. Thorne, watching from a distance, saw his plan unravel and rode away in a fit of rage. The truth of the old man's identity was finally revealed. He wasn't just a reclusive farmer, he was the town's protector. He had been testing people, looking for someone with a good heart. He offered her a job, not as a servant, but as his protégé, a chance to learn the business, to become a part of his family. He gave her a purpose, a new life, and the chance to use her good heart for something more than just survival. Elara's journey from a poor, lonely girl to a young woman of means and purpose was complete. Her story was not just a story of luck, but a story of kindness. Did her journey from a lonely orphan to a woman of purpose mean that the kindness she had shown had finally paid her back, or had she simply been lucky?